Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. And today we're going to do something a little different.
Oh,
Yeah, we are going to take a deep dive into business analysis.
nice.
And we've got a really fascinating training course document that we are going to be looking at.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So this isn't just like theory. This is like practical, real-world stuff.
Awesome.
And one of the things that I found so interesting about this is that they have something called the BACCM model.
Yeah.
And that can be applied to like any job, any project.
It's amazing how these principles apply across industries and experience levels.
Yeah, I know.
It's really fascinating.
So before we'll get into like all the specifics of that,
Okay.
let's just kind of take a step back
Sure.
and define what exactly is business analysis.
Yeah, that's a great point because I think it is one of those terms that gets thrown around a lot,
It does.
but maybe not everyone fully understands.
Right.
So at its core,
Yeah.
I think analysis is about solving problems,
Okay.
understanding needs,
Mm-hmm.
and driving change to deliver real value to organizations.
So it's not just for people who have the title business analyst.
Exactly.
Like this is stuff that anybody in any job can benefit from.
Absolutely. And I think viewing your work through that lens could be incredibly valuable,
Yeah, absolutely.
whether you're leading a team or just trying to get a project off the ground.
So let's get into this BACCM model you mentioned.
Yeah, so
It sounded a little intimidating to me at first.
that's right.
When I first saw it.
Yeah.
But now I'm kind of intrigued.
So the BACCM stands for Business Analysis Core Concept Model,
Okay.
and it really focuses on 6 core concepts.
Okay.
Changes, needs, solutions, stakeholders' value, and context.
Okay.
And what's important to remember is these concepts are all interconnected.
So it's not enough to just focus on like the solution. You have to think about all these other aspects.
You have to consider the bigger picture.
Yeah.
The stakeholders involved, the context, the value you're trying to create.
Right.
And by understanding one concept, it really deepens your understanding of all the others.
Yeah.
It's like a puzzle where each piece fits together to reveal the bigger picture.
I can see how neglecting even one of those elements could derail a project.
Absolutely.
Like you could come up with this brilliant solution,
Right.
but if it doesn't actually address the stakeholders' needs
Exactly.
or align with like the overall content,
Or the value you're trying to achieve.
then it's all for nothing.
It's a recipe for disaster.
So can you give me like a real world example of how these concepts might play out?
Sure. So let's say you're working on a project to improve a customer service process.
Okay.
You know, you need to consider the specific changes you want to make.
Like what kind of changes are we talking?
Well, it could be something like implementing a new CRM system
Okay.
or redesigning the customer service workflow.
Okay.
And then you need to consider the underlying need for those changes.
Yeah, like why are we making these changes?
Exactly. So is it to reduce customer complaints
Okay.
or improve response times?
Makes sense.
And of course, you need to think about the stakeholders.
Who are the stakeholders in this scenario?
Well, you've got the customers themselves, obviously, but
Oh, yeah?
also the customer service agents, their managers, and potentially other departments within the organization.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's not always just one group of people you need to think about.
No. And then you need to think about what value are we trying to create?
Right. So are you aiming to increase customer satisfaction,
Okay.
improve efficiency,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe reduce costs?
It's like a chain reaction, you know. Understanding the change leads to uncovering the need,
Right.
which then informs the solution.
Exactly.
And all of this needs to be considered within the context of those stakeholders and the overall value.
Precisely.
It's really interesting.
I think it's helpful to even think about a recent project
Okay.
that you worked on,
Mm-hmm.
maybe one that didn't go as smoothly as you'd hoped,
Oh, yeah, I've got a few of those.
and ask yourself, could applying the BACCM model
Okay.
have improved your approach and outcome?
That's a great question.
It's a powerful tool
It really is.
for making more strategic decisions.
Yeah, and it's not just for business analysts.
Right.
Like, this is stuff that anyone can benefit from.
Absolutely.
So this document outlines 2 key knowledge areas:
Okay.
business analysis planning and monitoring,
Okay.
and strategy analysis.
Right.
Now, those sound kind of dry,
They do a little bit.
but I have a feeling they're actually quite important.
They're the cornerstones
Okay.
of successful business analysis.
So planning and monitoring basically ensures that you're organized
Exactly.
and set up for success.
Right.
While strategy analysis is all about making sure your efforts are aligned with the big picture.
It's all about the big picture.
Okay, so let's start with planning and monitoring.
Okay.
What are the essential elements that we need to consider in this stage?
Well, the document breaks it down into 5 key tasks.
Okay.
Planning the business analysis approach.
Okay.
planning stakeholder engagement,
Mm-hmm.
planning business analysis governance,
Okay.
planning business analysis information management,
Wow.
and identifying business analysis performance improvements.
That's a lot.
It's a lot to keep track of.
5 tasks.
But
Important.
these are all about setting yourself up for success,
Okay.
making sure the project runs smoothly.
So let's take a closer look at each task.
Okay, sounds good,
So first up, we have planning the business analysis approach.
right?
What does that actually entail?
So this is where you decide how you're going to approach the work.
Okay.
Are you going to use a traditional plan-driven approach
Okay.
or a more agile and iterative approach?
So it's about choosing the right tools for the job.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
You wouldn't use a hammer to drive a screw, would you?
No.
So you need to choose the approach that best suits the project's needs and the level of uncertainty involved.
Okay, that makes sense. And then you have planning stakeholder engagement,
Right.
which I'm guessing is a lot more than just sending out meeting invites.
Oh, it is.
Right.
This is about really understanding your stakeholders,
Okay.
who they are, what their needs and expectations are, and how you're going to communicate with them throughout the project.
I'm starting to see a theme here.
What's that?
It's all about communication.
Communication is key.
Like, it's not just about doing the work, it's making sure that everyone is on the same page and informed.
Absolutely.
Okay, so next we have planning business analysis governance.
Yes.
Now, that sounds a little intimidating to me.
It does sound a bit bureaucratic.
Yeah.
But it's really about setting clear guidelines and processes
Okay.
for how decisions are made about requirements and designs.
So it's about establishing those rules of the road
Exactly.
to make sure that everything stays consistent and transparent and accountable.
It keeps things on track, prevents chaos.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Good. So moving on to task number 4.
Yes.
Planning business analysis information management.
Right. What kind of information are we talking about here?
This is all the documents, data, insights
Okay.
that are generated throughout the business analysis process.
Yeah.
Requirements, documents, design specifications, meeting notes, stakeholder feedback, all of that.
So it's about having a system in place to store and organize and access all of this information.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it would just be like a huge mess.
It would be like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
If you don't have a well-defined information management plan.
Okay, and finally, we have identifying business analysis performance improvements.
Yes.
So this sounds like it's about continuous learning and improvement,
It is.
you know?
It's about reflecting on what worked well, what could be improved,
Yeah,
how to continuously refine your approach.
constantly striving to be better.
Exactly.
I love that.
Good.
So we've covered those 5 key tasks involved in planning and monitoring.
We have.
And it's clear that this stage really sets the foundation
It does.
for a successful business analysis project.
Yes.
It's like building a house.
Oh, yeah.
You wouldn't start without a solid foundation.
Definitely not.
But even with the best plans, things don't always go as expected.
That's true.
And that kind of makes me think about the next knowledge area, strategy analysis.
Right.
It sounds like this is all about making sure our efforts are aligned with the organization's overall goals.
It's about understanding the big picture
Okay.
and making sure that we're not just solving problems in isolation,
Right.
but actually moving the organization in the right direction.
I like that analogy of connecting the dots.
Yeah,
It makes me think of those puzzles where you have to connect the numbers.
I know exactly what you mean.
And eventually, like, a picture emerges.
Yeah.
And strategy analysis helps us to create that picture.
That roadmap
Yeah.
for success.
Okay, so our training document goes into some detail about predictive versus adaptive approaches to business analysis.
Okay.
Now, I've heard those terms before,
Okay.
but to be honest, I'm a little fuzzy on the distinction.
Okay, well,
Can you break it down for me?
think of it this way.
Okay.
Predictive approaches are like building a house from a blueprint.
Okay.
You have a clear plan up front. You know exactly the materials you need, and you follow the plan step by step.
So it's all about predictability and control.
Exactly.
If you know exactly what you want to build
Right.
and you know how to build it, then a predictive approach makes sense.
Makes sense. But
What about those situations where things are a bit more unpredictable?
Yeah.
You know, where the requirements might change.
Right.
Or you're working in like a rapidly evolving market.
That's where adaptive approaches come in.
Okay.
It's more like navigating a maze,
Okay.
you know, the general direction you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to be prepared to take detours.
Okay.
Adjust your route as you encounter obstacles.
It's more about flexibility and iteration.
Exactly.
You know, you start with like a general plan,
Right.
but you're constantly adapting and adjusting based on feedback.
Based on feedback and changing circumstances.
So agile methodologies would fall under the adaptive approach.
Yeah, they're perfect examples.
So choosing the right approach is obviously crucial.
Yeah.
But how do you actually decide which one to use?
It really depends on the nature of the project
Okay.
and the level of uncertainty involved.
So if you have a clear understanding of the requirements
Right.
and the scope is well defined, then a predictive approach might be the best fit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But if you're dealing with a lot of unknowns or you expect things to change
Right.
along the way, then an adaptive approach might be better.
Yeah.
So it's about being pragmatic and choosing the methodology that best fits the situation.
It's not one size fits all.
And you can even combine elements of both approaches.
Absolutely.
You know, you might start with a predictive plan, but then incorporate some agile principles to allow for that flexibility.
That's a great point.
Okay, so I want to circle back to something we talked about earlier.
Sure.
Stakeholder management.
Yeah.
You mentioned that mismanaged stakeholders can cause major headaches.
They can make or break a project.
Yeah,
And I think the training document really highlights this.
it does.
The importance of not just identifying stakeholders, but really understanding their needs,
Yeah.
their expectations,
Yeah.
and their level of influence.
And the document talks about this stakeholder engagement assessment matrix,
It's a great tool.
which I thought was really fascinating.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit about what that is and why it's so valuable?
So it's a tool for analyzing the current state of stakeholder engagement
Okay.
and defining the desired state.
Okay, so let's say, for example, you're launching a new product
Okay,
and you've got your marketing team who's super enthusiastic,
they're ready to go.
and then you've got your finance department who's a little more cautious.
A little more cautious.
And then you've got your operations manager who's just like skeptical.
Yeah.
I can already see the potential for conflict.
Right, and that's where the stakeholder engagement assessment matrix comes in.
Okay.
It helps you map out where each of those stakeholders stands.
Okay.
In terms of their awareness,
Mm.
their understanding, their support,
Okay.
and their influence.
So you're kind of creating like a map
A stakeholder map.
of where everyone's at.
Exactly. And then you compare that current state
Okay.
to the desired state.
Mm-hmm.
Do you need to increase awareness?
Mhm.
Do you need to build understanding? Do you need to gain support?
And then based on that comparison, you can develop a tailored plan to bridge that gap.
Exactly.
So it might involve like targeted communication,
You could,
one-on-one meetings, workshops.
Yep.
All sorts of different strategies.
whatever it takes to move those stakeholders to the desired level of engagement.
So stakeholder management isn't just a one-time task.
No, it's an ongoing process
It's something you have to constantly be thinking about.
throughout the project lifecycle because those needs and expectations can change over time.
Okay, so now we're getting to a topic that everyone loves.
Oh, yeah.
Change management.
Everybody's favorite.
I'm just kidding.
I know.
I know it can be a bit of a pain point.
It can be challenging.
Why is change so difficult for people?
Well, I think it's because change is inherently disruptive.
Okay.
It challenges the status quo,
Yeah.
forces people to step outside of their comfort zones.
I know, I'm guilty of that.
It's natural to resist change,
I like my routine.
especially when you feel like you're not in control.
Yeah,
But the truth is, change is inevitable,
it is.
especially in today's fast-paced world.
Yeah.
So effective change management is essential.
And the document really emphasizes the negative impacts of poorly managed change.
It does.
You know, lower morale, increased stress conflicts,
Yeah.
decreased productivity.
It can really impact the quality of work.
It sounds like a recipe for chaos.
It can be.
But if we understand why people resist change,
Right.
then we can develop strategy to mitigate those challenges and make the transition smoother.
Exactly.
So what are some of those key strategies for effective change management?
Well, communication is key. You need to clearly communicate the reasons for the change,
Okay,
the benefits that people can expect, and how it will impact them.
right.
And it's not just about one-way communication.
No.
It's about actively engaging stakeholders and listening to their concerns.
So make them feel like they're part of the process,
Mhm.
not just subject to it,
Right.
and address their concerns.
Provide support,
Yeah,
celebrate successes.
yeah.
Remember, change is a process.
It's not an event.
not an event.
So the document mentions this concept of the adoption life cycle.
Oh, yeah?
Can you explain what that is
Sure.
and how it relates to change management?
So this concept suggests that people react to change in predictable ways.
Okay.
You have your early adopters,
Yeah.
the people who are excited about change.
They're the ones who are always lining up for the latest iPhone.
Exactly.
Right.
They thrive on novelty,
Yeah.
and they're eager to experiment.
And then you have like the early majority and the late majority
Oh.
who are a little bit more cautious,
They are.
need more time to kind of
And
adapt.
need to see evidence that it's working.
And then you've got the laggards
The laggards.
who are resistant to change and may never fully come on
They
board.
might be skeptical or fearful
Yeah.
or just set in their ways.
So the key is to understand where each stakeholder falls on this spectrum.
Exactly.
And then tailor your change management strategies accordingly.
You might focus on winning over your early adopters first.
Right. Right.
and using them as champions to influence the rest of the organization.
Because they can be really powerful advocates for change.
They can.
Okay, so we've talked about the planning, the stakeholder management, the change management.
Yeah,
And it's really amazing to see how all these pieces fit together.
it is.
It's like a symphony.
It is like a symphony.
You know, each instrument is playing its part to create this harmonious whole.
Beautiful analogy.
And we're not done yet.
Not quite.
We still have one more knowledge area to explore.
Yes.
Strategy analysis.
Strategy analysis.
So let's dive into the big picture
Let's do it.
and see how we can create that roadmap for successful organizational change.
I'm excited.
All right, welcome back to the deep dive.
It's like we've reached the summit.
Yeah, we
It's been a
have.
challenging climb.
And now we're just taking in the view.
Enjoying the view.
So we're wrapping up our business analysis journey
We are.
with a focus on strategy analysis.
Strategy analysis.
And this gives us that like panoramic perspective.
It does.
Where we can see how all the pieces of the puzzle fit together.
We see the big picture.
Okay, so the training document highlights 4 key tasks.
Okay.
Analyze current state, define future state, assess risks, and define change strategy.
Those are the 4.
Now, we already talked about analyzing the current state.
We did.
It's about understanding where the organization is right now, strengths, weaknesses, at all.
Right.
But I'm curious about
Yeah.
what does that analysis actually look like in practice?
It's a bit like detective work,
Okay,
gathering clues from various sources
okay.
to paint a complete picture of the organization's current reality.
So you might review existing documentation,
We might
conduct interviews.
talk to people across different departments,
Okay,
observe processes in action, analyze data to uncover trends and patterns.
it's not just about crunching numbers.
It's not just about the numbers.
It's about gathering insights from a variety of sources.
A variety of sources, both quantitative and qualitative.
And it's important to approach this with an objective and unbiased lens.
Absolutely.
It's not trying to place blame or point fingers.
We're just trying to understand how things work,
Right.
where the pain points are, what opportunities exist for improvement.
Okay, so once we have a solid understanding of the current state,
Then
we move on to defining the future state.
the fun part,
This is where things get really exciting.
it's like having a blank canvas,
Right.
and you get to design the ideal version of the organization.
It's a chance to dream big.
It is.
But it's also crucial to be grounded in reality.
Grounded in reality.
You know, the future state should be both aspirational and achievable.
Absolutely.
It needs to align with the organization's strategic goals,
Of course.
take into account its capabilities and constraints.
We have to be realistic.
So it's not just about wishful thinking.
You're right.
It's about creating a vision that's both inspiring and realistic.
Exactly.
So we need to ask ourselves, what are the specific outcomes
Yep.
that we're hoping to achieve?
Hmm.
How will this change move the organization closer to its goals?
Those are the big questions.
And how will we know if we've actually achieved those goals?
How will we measure success?
What metrics are we going to track?
Right, we need measurable outcomes.
Okay, now this brings us to the next task,
Okay.
assessing risks.
Risks.
Now, I tend to be a bit of an optimist, always focusing on the positive,
I could see that.
but I know that ignoring potential risks can be a recipe for disaster.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like setting off on a journey
Yeah.
without checking the weather forecast.
Or packing a spare tire.
Right, exactly.
You might get lucky,
You might.
but it's better to be prepared.
So how do we go about identifying and analyzing those potential risks?
There are a variety of techniques we can use.
Okay.
Brainstorming with stakeholders,
Mm-hmm.
reviewing historical data from past projects,
Okay.
conducting risk assessments,
Mm-hmm.
even consulting with experts in specific areas.
So we need to be thorough.
Be thorough.
Consider all of those potential risks, both internal and external.
Internal, external, all of them.
So it's not just what could go wrong within the organization.
Right.
It's also external factors like market shifts, regulatory changes, even natural disasters.
All of those things.
And remember, risks aren't always negative.
That's true.
There might be opportunities
Opportunities.
that arise from a change initiative
Exactly.
that we need to identify and capitalize on.
Every cloud has a silver lining.
Yeah,
Risk assessment isn't just about avoiding threats.
right.
It's also about identifying and leveraging opportunities.
So once we've identified and analyzed the risks,
That-
we need to prioritize them.
We do.
We can't tackle everything at once.
No way.
So which risks pose the biggest threat?
Right.
Which ones are most likely to occur?
Which ones would have the greatest impact if they did occur?
So we need to focus our efforts on mitigating the most critical risks.
Exactly.
Be strategic in our risk management approach.
Absolutely.
So what are the showstoppers?
What could really derail the project?
And what can we do to prevent them from happening?
What are our mitigation strategies?
And risk management is an ongoing process.
It is.
You know, we need to monitor those risks throughout the project. project.
And adjust our strategies as needed.
Okay, so now we're at the final task,
Okay.
defining the change strategy.
The roadmap.
This is where we connect all the dots.
It is.
The current state, the future state, the risks, the opportunity.
All of it comes together.
And we create that roadmap for success.
It's where we translate vision into action.
I like that.
Yeah.
So the change strategy outlines the specific steps
The steps.
that we need to take to move from the current state to the desired future state,
From point A to point B.
taking into account all of those risks and opportunities that we've identified.
Right.
So we're talking timelines, resources, budgets, key performance indicators,
The whole 9 yards.
the whole 9 yards.
We need to have a solid plan.
And communication is crucial.
Oh, absolutely.
We need to make sure that the change strategy is clearly communicated
Everyone needs to be on the same page.
and understood by all stakeholders.
So we're all rowing in the same direction.
It's really amazing how this all ties together,
Yeah.
from understanding the core concepts of business analysis
Mm-hmm.
to planning and managing change.
It all connects.
It's a holistic framework for achieving success.
It is.
And the best part is that these principles can be applied in so many different contexts.
Right.
Whether you're leading a large-scale organizational transformation or just trying to improve a process.
Within your team.
Within your team.
It's all applicable.
All right, folks. Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of business analysis.
We have.
And I don't know about you, but I'm feeling incredibly energized
I feel energized too.
and equipped to tackle any challenge
I'm ready for anything.
that comes my way.
Bring it on.
We hope you've enjoyed this deep dive as much as we have.
I hope so.
And remember, business analysis is more than just a set of tools and techniques.
It's a mindset.
It's a way of thinking critically and strategically about problems and solutions.
A way of approaching challenges.
So as you go about your day, your week, your work, think about how you can apply these principles to your own challenges
To your own work.
and opportunities.
You might be surprised at the results.
You might be surprised at the impact you can have.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep those brains buzzing.
Keep learning, keep growing. Yeah, it does feel like that solid foundation.
Right, and even with the best plans, things don't always go as expected.
That's true.
Which leads me to the next knowledge area, strategy analysis.
Okay.
And it really sounds like it's about understanding that big picture.
Yeah, it is about connecting the dots
Okay.
between the current state of the organization, the desired future state,
Mm-hmm.
and the actions that are needed to bridge that gap,
Okay.
making sure that we're moving in the right direction.
I like that connecting the dots. It
Mhm.
makes me think of those puzzles
Uh-huh.
where you have to connect the numbers
Oh, yeah,
and eventually a picture emerges.
exactly. Strategy analysis helps us create that picture.
Yeah, that roadmap for achieving our goals.
Yes.
Now, the training document goes into some detail about predictive versus adaptive approaches to business analysis.
Okay.
I've heard these terms before,
Right.
but honestly, I'm a little fuzzy on the distinction.
Okay.
Can you break it down for me?
Sure. So think of it this way.
Okay.
Predictive approaches are like building a house from a blueprint.
Okay.
You have a clear plan up front.
Mm-hmm.
You know exactly what materials you need.
Okay.
And you follow that plan step by step.
So it's all about predictability and control.
Exactly. You know exactly what you want to build and how to build it.
Right.
Predictive approach makes sense.
Yeah. What about the situations, though, where things are a bit more unpredictable?
Okay. Yeah.
The requirements might change along the way.
Right.
Or you're working in a really rapidly evolving market.
That's when you need adaptive approaches.
Okay.
Think of it more like navigating a maze.
Okay.
You know, the general direction you want to go,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to be prepared to take detours
Okay.
and adjust your route as you encounter obstacles.
So it's not all about that flexibility and iteration.
Exactly.
You start with a general plan,
Right.
but you're constantly adapting based on feedback and changing circumstances.
Yes.
So agile methodologies would fall under adaptive approaches.
They're a perfect example. Yeah.
Okay, so choosing the right approach is obviously crucial.
Yeah, it is.
But how do you decide which one to use?
It really depends on the nature of the project
Okay.
and the level of uncertainty.
So if you have a clear understanding of the requirements,
Right.
scope is well defined,
Yeah,
predictive approach might be the best fit.
it could be.
But if you're dealing with a lot of unknowns or you expect the requirements to change along the way,
Yeah.
adaptive approach might be a better choice.
Right.
So it's about being pragmatic and just choosing the methodology that best fits the situation.
Exactly. It's not one size fits all.
Right, and you can even combine elements of both.
Absolutely.
You could start with a predictive plan, but then incorporate some agile principles to allow us that flexibility.
That's a really good point.
So I want to circle back to something we talked about earlier.
Okay.
Stakeholder management.
Yeah, stakeholder management.
You mentioned that mismanaged stakeholders can cause major headaches.
They can.
And I've definitely experienced that firsthand.
I think we all have at some point.
And our training document really emphasizes the importance of not just identifying stakeholders,
Right.
but really understanding their needs, their expectations, their level of influence.
It's all important. Yeah.
And the document talks about the Stakeholder Engagement Assessment Matrix.
Oh, it's a great tool.
And I have to say, this was one of the things that really clicked for me when I was reading this document.
Oh, good.
Can you explain what that is?
Sure.
Why it's so valuable?
So it's a tool for analyzing the current state of stakeholder engagement
Okay.
and defining the desired state.
Okay, so let's say, for example,
Yep.
we are launching a new product.
Okay.
And we have our marketing team who is super enthusiastic.
They're raring to go.
Raring to go. And then we have our finance department who's a little bit more cautious.
A little hesitant.
And then we have our operations manager who's just skeptical.
They're not sure about this whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see the potential for conflict there.
Right.
So that's where the stakeholder engagement assessment matrix can be helpful.
Okay.
It helps you visualize where each of these stakeholders stands
Okay.
in terms of their awareness,
Mm-hmm.
their understanding,
Okay.
their support, and their influence.
So you're kind of like creating a map
A stakeholder map.
of where everyone's at.
Exactly. And then you compare that current state
Okay.
to the desired state.
Okay.
Do we need to increase awareness?
Right.
Do we need to build understanding?
Do you need to gain support?
And then based on that comparison,
Yeah.
you can develop a plan to bridge the gap.
Okay, so it might involve things like targeted communication,
It could.
one-on-one meetings, workshops,
Right, all those
whatever it takes.
to move those stakeholders to that desired level of engagement.
So stakeholder management is not just a one-time task.
No, it's
It's
ongoing
an ongoing process
throughout the project lifecycle.
because those needs and expectations can change over time.
They do.
Okay, so this brings us to a topic that I think everybody loves.
Oh, yeah.
Change management.
Everyone's favorite.
Just kidding. I know it can be a bit of a pain point.
It can be a challenge, for sure.
Why is change so difficult for people?
I think it's because change is inherently disruptive.
Okay.
It challenges that status quo
Yeah.
and forces people to step outside of their comfort zones.
Yeah, I know I'm guilty of that.
It's a natural human reaction to resist change,
I like my routine.
especially if you feel like you're not in control.
Yeah,
But the reality is, change is inevitable,
it is.
especially in today's fast-paced world.
It is.
So effective change management is critical.
Yeah, and the training document really emphasizes those negative impacts of poorly managed change.
It does.
You know, lower morale, increased stress conflicts,
Yep.
increased productivity decline in the quality of work.
It can have a ripple effect.
It sounds like a recipe for organizational chaos.
It can be if it's not handled well.
But if we understand why people resist change,
Right.
we can develop strategies to kind of mitigate those challenges and make the transition smoother.
Exactly.
So what are some of those key strategies for effective change management?
Well, communication is absolutely key.
Okay.
You need to clearly communicate the reasons for the change,
Okay.
the benefits people can expect, how it will impact them.
Okay.
And it's not just about one-way communication.
No.
It's about engaging stakeholders, listening to their concerns.
Making them feel like they're part of the change,
Yes, part of the process.
not just subject to it.
Exactly. Addressing those concerns, providing support, and celebrating successes.
Yeah, change is a process.
It is a process, not an event.
Not an event.
No.
So the training document mentions this concept called the adoption life cycle.
Oh, yeah?
Can you explain what that is and how it relates to change management?
Yeah, so it suggests that people react to change in predictable ways.
Okay.
You have your early adopters,
Okay.
those who are excited about change and embrace it quickly.
Those are the people who are always first in line for the latest gadgets.
Exactly. They thrive on novelty. They're eager to experiment.
Then you have the early majority and the late majority who are a little more cautious.
A little bit more hesitant.
Need more time to adapt.
Yeah, they want to see the evidence
Yeah.
before we jump on board.
And then you have the laggards.
Yeah, the laggards.
Who are resistant to change and may never fully come on board.
They're skeptical. They might be fearful or just set in their ways.
So the key is to understand where each stakeholder falls on that spectrum
Yes,
and tailor your change management strategies accordingly.
exactly.
So you might want to focus on those early adopters
Yes.
first and use them as champions
To influence the rest of the organization.
because they can be really powerful advocates for change.
They can.
It's really fascinating to see how all of these pieces fit together.
It is.
You know, the planning, the stakeholder management, the change management.
Yeah.
It's like a symphony.
It is like a symphony
Each instrument is playing its part.
to create this harmonious whole.
And we're not done yet.
Are not done.
We still have one more knowledge area to explore:
Let's see.
strategy analysis.
Strategy analysis.
Let's dive into that big picture
Okay.
and see how we can create create that roadmap for successful organizational change.
Sounds good.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We're wrapping up our business analysis journey with a focus on strategy analysis. It's like reaching the summit after a challenging climb.
And the view from up here is incredible. Strategy analysis gives us that panoramic perspective, allows us to see how all the pieces of the puzzle fit together.
Okay, let's break it down. Our training document highlights 4 key tasks: analyze current state, define future state, assess risks, and define change strategy. We've already talked about analyzing the current state, understanding where the organization stands right now, strengths, weaknesses, all of that. But I'm curious about the how. What does that analysis actually look like when you're doing it?
It's a bit like detective work, really, gathering clues from various sources to paint a complete picture of the organization's current reality.
Okay.
So we might review existing documentation, conduct interviews with stakeholders across different departments.
Talk to people.
Yeah, talk to people, observe processes in action, and analyze data to uncover trends and patterns.
So it's not just about crunching numbers, it's about gathering insights from a variety of sources.
Exactly, both quantitative and qualitative.
And it's important to approach this with an objective and unbiased lens, right?
Absolutely. We're not looking to place blame or point fingers. We're simply trying to understand how things work, where the pain points are, and what opportunities exist for improvement.
Okay, so once we've got a solid understanding of the current state, we move on to defining the future state. And this is where things get really exciting. It's like having a blank canvas and the freedom to design the ideal version of the organization.
It's a chance to dream big, but it's also crucial to be grounded in reality. The future state should be both aspirational and achievable,
Right.
aligning with the organization's overall strategic goals and taking into account its capabilities and constraints.
So it's not just wishful thinking. It's about creating a vision that's both inspiring and realistic.
Exactly.
So we need to ask ourselves, what are the specific outcomes we're hoping to achieve? How will this change move the organization closer to its goals?
Yeah, and we need to define those outcomes in a way that's measurable.
Right. How will we know if we've actually achieved our goals? What metrics will we track?
Exactly.
Okay, so this brings us to the next task. Assessing risks. Now, I tend to be a bit of an optimist, always focusing on the positive, but I know that ignoring potential risks can be a recipe for disaster.
Oh, absolutely. It's like setting off on a journey without checking the weather forecast or packing a spare tire. You might get lucky, but it's better to be prepared.
So how do we go about identifying and analyzing those potential risks?
Well, there are a variety of techniques we can use. Brainstorming with stakeholders, reviewing historical data from past projects, conducting risk assessments. We could even consult with experts in specific areas.
Okay.
The key is to be thorough and consider all the potential risks, both internal and external.
So it's not just about what could go wrong within the organization, but also external factors like market shifts, regulatory changes.
Even natural disasters.
And remember, risks aren't always negative, right? There might be opportunities that arise from a change initiative.
That's a good point. Every cloud has a silver lining.
We need to identify and capitalize on those.
Exactly. Risk assessment isn't just about avoiding threats. It's also about identifying and leveraging opportunities.
Okay, so once we've identified and analyzed the risks, we need to prioritize them, right?
We do. We can't tackle everything at once.
So which risks pose the biggest threat to the project's success? Which ones are most likely to occur? And which ones would have the greatest impact?
Yeah, that helps us focus our efforts on mitigating those most critical risks.
Be strategic in our risk management approach. What are the showstoppers? What could really derail this project?
Right.
And what can we do to prevent those things from happening?
Exactly. And remember, risk management is an ongoing process. We need to monitor risks throughout the project lifecycle and adjust our strategies as needed.
So this leads us to the final task, defining the change strategy. This is where we connect all the dots, the current state, the future state, the risks, the opportunities, and create that roadmap for success.
It's where we translate our vision into action. The change strategy outlines the specific steps we need to take to move from the current state to that desired future state, taking into account all those risks and opportunities we've identified.
Okay, so we're talking timelines, resources, budgets, key performance indicators, the whole 9 yards.
The whole 9 yards. We need a solid plan.
And communication is crucial here as well, right?
Absolutely.
We need to make sure the change strategy is clearly communicated and understood by all those stakeholders. We want everyone rowing in the same direction.
Exactly.
It's amazing how this all ties together, from understanding the core concept of business analysis to planning and managing change. It's a holistic framework for achieving success.
And the best part is these principles can be applied in so many different contexts. Whether you're leading a large-scale organizational transformation or simply trying to improve a process within your team.
Well, folks, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of business analysis. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling incredibly energized and equipped to tackle any challenge that comes my way.
Me too. It's been a fascinating journey exploring these concepts and seeing how they can empower us to make better decisions, drive positive change, and create lasting value.
We hope you've enjoyed this deep dive as much as we have. And remember, business analysis is more than just a set of tools and techniques.
It's a mindset.
It's a way of thinking critically and strategically about problems and solutions.
Absolutely.
So as you go about your day, your week, your work, think about how you can apply these principles to your own challenges and opportunities. You might be surprised by the impact you can have. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep those brains buzzing.
Keep learning, keep growing.